All right, so the day started with Darius Slay getting released by the Philadelphia Eagles, and by night's end, he is back, re-signing and returning to the Birds. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. coming to you from home because it is late on a Wednesday night, but moves keep happening across the National Football League. If you're on the West Coast, I'm recording this right now. It's about 11:24 p.m. Give me a real one, and no matter where you are, give me a real one down in the comment section, and type those twos as well because Darius Slay is returning. So what a turn of events this day has been, and it was always a possibility that Darius Slay was going to return to the Eagles after he was released. Heading into the 2023 season, he had a cap hit of $26.1 million. No money on that contract for him was guaranteed, but him returning at that price tag was kind of cost prohibitive for Philadelphia. They looked at him with that cap hit, base salary of around $17 million, and he looked at it as, I'm 32 years old, I want a long-term deal. I want more years. I want more financial security with my contract. And that's why the Eagles gave him permission, him and his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, to seek a trade, to see what he could get out there. But the Eagles weren't able to find a trade partner, and maybe Darius Slay wasn't able to field better offers out there from other teams across the National Football League. So because the Eagles and Darius Slay couldn't come to an agreement on a deal, they release him. Now they bring him back, and I'm fascinated to see what the contractual figures are going to be for Darius Slay. Now, let's give credit where credit is due here. John Clark of NBC Sports Philadelphia was basically on this right from the jump that there was a possibility that Slay was going to return. And then this really started to pick up momentum at about 8 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Eastern, and then it started to progress to a point where Slay even tweeted out that he is back. And anytime the wifey, Jennifer Slay, is also tweeting that they're returning, you know that happy wife equals happy life, and Darius Slay in a really good spot. She tweeted out, "We here, baby." Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer saying that Darius Slay's rework deal is not expected to include new money and should help clear some salary cap space for the Eagles this season, a source said. And as far as what Darius Slay had to say on Twitter as well, it looks as though he's really pumped up to be returning to the Philadelphia Eagles. He tweeted out, "Back like I never left, run it back." What's cool about this circumstance, and we saw something similar last year with Fletcher Cox when he was released and then brought back on a short-term, 1-year cheaper deal, is that there was always a good relationship between Slay and this Eagles organization. And for Howie Roseman to run things like he's running, I guarantee you there are other teams across the National Football League who are seeing how the Eagles run business and how they treat some of their alumni, how they treat some of their current players, and they have to be really impressed, like, man, Philadelphia really running its operations like that. So it was always cordial between Slay and Philadelphia, and that's how they were able to come to an agreement on this new deal. We're not sure what the years are yet, what the money is yet. Of course, that is going to trickle out, but because this relationship was always harmonious, Slay is able to come back, and he's really excited about it, and it could be a pretty team-friendly deal. For Philadelphia right now in free agency, you had massive question marks on this defense. Javon Hargrave left. You lost 2 backers in TJ Edwards and Kaiser White. You lost Marcus Epps. We'll see what happens with CJ Gardner-Johnson. Heading into the free agency period, it didn't look like they were going to be able to retain James Bradberry and CJ Gardner-Johnson and maybe Darius Slay. Now, according to reports out there, Denver Broncos entering the CJ Gardner-Johnson sweepstakes, but at the very least, what you have is a secondary that was one of the best last year at the cornerback position, with now James Bradberry and Darius Slay, who are 2 of the top cornerbacks in the NFL last year. And you remember, Slay went on his podcast and said, "Look, no hard feelings here. This is a business. I love the Eagles. I love the fans. I want to come back. I just want a new deal." And now both sides kind of win in this. Slay gets to go to the destination that he wanted to go to. And now the Philadelphia Eagles get a very, very good player back. What does this do for the Eagles' draft plans now? Look, you have Darius Slay, you have James Bradberry, 2 of the top corners in the National Football League, certainly one of the top cornerback tandems in a league that now features some really good ones, like Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. And on top of that, you have a really good defensive line now that can still get after the opposing quarterback to make that secondary's job easier, where they can kind of feast out there and get a little bit aggressive as compared to maybe other teams that have bad defensive lines that can't generate that pressure on a quarterback. You can't get as aggressive on that back end because you might get beat on a double move. But like we saw last year, this is an Eagles defense that all three levels really was flying around. So to have James Bradbury and Darius Slay back with the pretty solid defensive line, that's impressive. I'm not sure now if the Eagles go corner at number 10. They haven't drafted a corner in the first round since the early 2000s with Lito Shepherd. I'm not sure. Maybe they go corner at number 30 now, and they address more of a position of need that's a foundational element to a football team. And that's how the Eagles build their best squads. It's along the offensive line and the defensive line. Jalen Carter pretty much shit the bed during his pro day today at Georgia. He was slipping around. He was huffing and puffing. He was gasping for air. He was 9 pounds overweight from the NFL Combine, which wasn't long ago. So that's a little bit of a red flag. Do you go him at defensive tackle if he falls to number 10? Because a couple of weeks ago, people were talking about him as a potential number 1 overall pick. Do you go with the safer option, maybe like a Brian Breesy? But I have concerns about him because of the injuries. What this does is it opens up the floor for the Eagles to do a couple of things in the NFL draft. They could still go corner. They could go edge rusher. They could go defensive tackle depending on how the board falls. They could even go wide receiver 3 if they really wanted to. A name to keep an eye out for is Peter Skoronski, the tackle guard hybrid from Northwestern, or maybe even a Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. So big news for the Eagles today in a day that was pretty active, and what a day it was. Begins with Darius Slay getting released. It ends with Darius Slay returning to the Eagles. Hopefully on top of this, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is able to come back, and then you feel really, really good about where this defense is and where this overall team is, because the offense pretty much returns everybody outside of Miles Sanders and maybe Isaac Seumalo. But if Cam Jurgens fills in at right guard and you have the best offensive line coach in the NFL in Jeff Stoutland, and Jalen Hurts takes another step with arguably the best all-around tight end in the game outside of maybe George Kittle and Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, one of the top 1-2 punches at wide receiver. You have a running back backfield now that consists of Kenny Gainwell, Rashad Penny, as well as Boston Scott. You're paying all three of those players a combined $2.5 million. And because of that McLean report, this might allow the Eagles to save some money to maybe sign a C.J. Gardner-Johnson or to continue to round out this roster. So appreciate everybody for watching the show. Late night Philadelphia Eagles. Now y'all are the best. If you're still here, give me another real one. We'll be back tomorrow. Maybe we'll be going live. Whatever happens, news, rumors, analysis, we got you covered here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Subscribe. And finally, for a lot of you, you can go to bed, or for some of you, good morning.